What is up, everyone? My name is Michael Pohl with Bay Area Aquatics, and today I'm going to show you how to make your own pre-intake sponge filter. So why would you want an intake filter to begin with, or an intake sponge filter, whatever you want to call it? And I keep mumbling the words and I never know which ones to put in there. I'm just going to call it something, but you know what I'm talking about. Basically, I like them because it keeps the food and the fry and things like that out of my filter. It keeps all the big gunky pieces, all the big fish poop and all that out from jamming my filter. I don't have to clean my hang-on back filters as much. I just clean the pre-filter sponge, and it keeps things from jamming, and it keeps the impeller from getting sand in it, and it just keeps things out of the filter except for the fine particles and then the water to be able to biologically clean it. A lot of people like the sponge pre-filters because they think it eliminates the need for a sponge in the hang-on back filter. I still run a sponge in my hang-on back filters. I'm probably going to cut them in half, that's just so I can fit a little more biological media in it. Some people, like I said, don't run it. I do just because it's a good spot for bacteria to grow and it kind of gives me a flat layer. But that's an option if you've got maybe a cartridge filter or something like that you've put biomedia in instead, and you want some more space, or the way that the water flows. A lot of them, they flow from the side, so it's hard to kind of get that sponge to like properly block it. This would be a good option for you. You could put a sponge on the intake and kind of let it filter it before it hits all your biomedia, so you don't have to clean your biomedia as much. Now you can buy an intake filter. I know Petco sells the little Fluval, they're like $1, $2, the little pre-intake sponges. The problem with those is they're super fine sponge, so they clog really easily, especially on like an AquaClear 110. When I put them on my 110s, they clogged in like 4 hours. So that's not good. I don't want to have to clean my intake filters every 4 hours. And even on smaller tanks, they can get away with them. If it's like a 5-gallon beta tank, you could probably get away with that little Fluval sponge, depending on what you've got in the tank. But even then, it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a coarser sponge. Now, Aquarium Co-op sells one. I think he said that his are like 15 to 30-ish PPI. I know the little sheet of foam that they sell is 15 PPI, but I think the sponge intakes are a little bit less like coarse, or whatever they call it. I use this big old thing of sponge. It's like 15 bucks for this big old sheet of it. You can use it for a lot of other things that we'll talk about in another video, but one of the things I use it for is my intake sponges. So I just cut off a little square, right? And this sheet, I've already cut off some of it, so I think it's 22 inches long or something like that. But I just cut off a little block of it, and then all I do is right in the middle, it's 2 inches thick, right in the middle of the little thing I cut off, you just take your scissors and just kind of start cutting down. So you get a little channel right into the sponge. And you don't want to go all the way down at the bottom, because then it's going to let you have water coming in without going through that sponge. But you can kind of go down, and depending on your intake tube size, you can cut it wider, a little smaller, however it fits on your intake tube, and then just slide it on. I used to use a different type of intake that had like a PVC thing. It was more like a sponge filter that kind of was adapted to fit. The problem is those were big, they were kind of hard to get off and clean, and they tended to clog pretty easy even though they were a low PPI, just because the way they sat, they grew a lot of algae on the top of them, versus this one, the majority of it's on the side. So there was issues with the other ones. As much as I loved them, I just couldn't keep doing it. And so these are super easy. The nice thing about these is this, like I said, this entire sheet is $15 or so. I'll leave the link down in the description below. But I can make like 30 or 40 intake sponges for a 110 on these. If I had a smaller filter, you could definitely do a lot more than that. Now, I know Aquarium Co-op also sells their own intake filters. They're a little less coarse than these. They're nicer, they're round, they're properly drilled. If you've only got 1 or 2 tanks, I'd actually recommend going and picking up those from aquariumcoop.com. I want to say they're like $5 or $10 a piece. I think they're actually $5 or $6, not 10. $5 or $6 a piece. Which, like I said, if you've got 1 or 2 tanks, not a big deal. But if you've got a bunch of tanks, or you want to use it for other projects, it can kind of add up. But this is a super cost-effective way to be able to pre-intake, prevent fry from getting into your filter and dying, prevent plant debris or fish food or anything like that. It'll cut down on your fish food cost, because it'll get stuck on the intake filter part, and you're not going to have your fish food getting stuck in your filter, and now your fish aren't getting to eat it. You're wasting food that way. So there's a lot of pros to running an intake filter, and definitely recommend it. Let me know down in the comments below, do you run a sponge intake filter, or do you run like pantyhose over it, or any sort of like intake, or do you just leave the filter in the tank and just let it do what it does? Let me know why you do that and why you choose to do what you do. I'm always curious to hear on what your opinions are and what you guys do, and I like seeing the discussion down in the comments. If you're new here and you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell notification so you get notified every time I upload a video. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, you know what to do. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.